Today, I wanted to share, I want to go back quite a few years today, quite a few years, to another true story that has, I think, a great lesson for all of us upcoming business people, me, you. But this happened to me years ago. I was back as a senior in Milburn High School, Milburn, New Jersey, and I wasn't particularly a very good student. I was more into sports at the time, more into athletics. And if you recall, that was back in the day where if you didn't go to college, perhaps Vietnam might have been in your future. So my guidance counselor, his name was Mr. Zuckerman, I'll never forget Mr. Zuckerman, he approached me in the hall one day and he says, Mike, it's time to apply to colleges. And I hadn't given it much thought at the time. And I said, well, I really haven't given it much thought. And he says, well, it's about time you do. I suggest you go home and talk to your parents and find out where you want to apply to college. So I did just that. I went home that weekend and I remember telling my mom, I said, Mom, my guidance counselor confronted me in the hall and it's time we register or apply for college. And she said, well, where do you want to go? And I said, I don't know. I haven't given it much thought. And she says, well, you better decide because you want to apply to where you want to go. So true story. I remember it was a Saturday. I forget what time of year it was, but it wasn't the fall because I would have been playing football at the time. But in any event, I looked down and I saw something, a reference to the University of Notre Dame. And I said, that's kind of a neat school. I've heard a lot about it. They play good football. I said, I think I'll go to Notre Dame. And my mom said, well, it's as good as any. Go apply to Notre Dame. So when I went back to school that Monday, Mr. Zuckerman said, Mike, did you talk to your parents? I said, well, I talked to my mom about it. And we decided that I'm going to apply to the University of Notre Dame. And he said, you don't be silly. You don't have the class rank. You don't have the SAT scores. Notre Dame is not in your future. You have to go somewhere else. So I went home that night and I said, Mom, Notre Dame's out of the picture. I can't go there. I'm not smart enough. Who said, my mom? My mom said, who said you're not smart enough? I said, my guidance counselor, and that's his business. He knows these things. And she said, well, if you want to go, no, she asked me a question. She said, does he accept people into Notre Dame? And I said, no. Well, then you apply and let them refuse. Let them send you a refusal. So I applied to the University of Notre Dame. And lo and behold, in a couple of weeks or months, I forget, I get a letter back with the golden dome up in the left-hand corner. The University of Notre Dame wrote me a letter. How cool is that? And it said, Dear Mike, thank you very much for applying to the University of Notre Dame, but because of your class rank and because of your SATs, we can't accept you when we suggest you go to another institution. So I showed that to my mom, and she got kind of irreverent, and she says, come on, that's a rejection. We don't want that. And sit down and write a letter back to Notre Dame and tell them that you really misunderstood our application, that we want to come. So I did that. I wrote a second letter back to the university, to the people who accepted registrations, and I said, give me another shot. I really want to come here. And they sent me back a second letter. And they said, Dear Mike, we applaud your tenacity, but we can't let you in. But I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll put you on the waiting list. How's that? And I was so excited. I said, Mom, I got on the waiting list of the University of Notre Dame. My mom was not impressed. She said, sit down and write another letter. And I said, Mom, we're pushing this. She goes, sit down and write what I tell you. So I wrote another letter back, again saying, give my credentials a look. I really want to come here. Well, as God is my judge, the next letter I get with the golden dome up in the left-hand corner was a letter from the University of Notre Dame that said, Mr. Marchev, welcome to the class of 71. True story. Where's the lesson? The lesson is that a lot of us, a lot of people, a lot of students, a lot of adults, we accept rejection. We call it rejection, but then when people say no to us, or we are refused to do something, we accept that. We accept that and move on to the next project. And that lesson taught me that if you really want something, go back after it. If you really want to do business with somebody and you really think that you're qualified to do so, Don't accept that, oh, we're just looking. Now, you don't want to be rude, and you don't want to be manipulative, and you don't want to be aggressive, and you don't want to be obnoxious. But if you approach it a second or third or fourth time or eighth time or 12th time with patience, with value, with consideration, with appreciation, if you do it right, you are going to make a mark. You are going to position yourself as the real deal, because people who aren't the real deal, they accept refusal. They expect it. Hey, there you go. They expect it, and then they go away. But the person who comes back shows the confidence, shows the belief in themselves, and goes back for a second attempt or a third attempt or a fourth attempt. And I have that letter from the University of Notre Dame. Now, here is the glitch. The glitch is that I received a little letter from another school that had a real genuine interest in me for another reason, had to do with sports, and I ended up at the University of Massachusetts. So I, at the time, really wanted Notre Dame, worked for it, got in, but then bad news, didn't go. Do I regret the decision? Nah, you don't regret anything. You make your decisions, you move on. But my message to you is to don't be so quick to accept a rejection from anybody, because sometimes that's just a knee-jerk go away. And the person who comes back positions themselves as the real deal. And I believe you're the real deal. So remember my Notre Dame story. It's another true story, and I hope it helps you moving forward.